What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Kwari Aline, and welcome to episode 5 of the Up and Coming podcast. This episode is particularly special to me because it combines 3 worlds that are near and dear to my heart: sports, sneakers, and art. What more could you ask for, right? Today's guest is none other than well-renowned photorealist Adam Port, whose paintings have graced the hands of Michael Jordan, Jay-Z, Ray Lewis, Larry King, and so many others. Port has an uncanny ability to bring his paintings to life in a way that makes them indiscernible from the photos they mimic. Like this one, a pair of black cement Jordan 4s from Port's in-flight collection. Can you spot the difference? Yeah, neither could I. I even tested out how well a painting of my own could compare. And let's just say, I'm still in my up-and-coming phase. Today, we'll be discussing Port's journey into art, his time spent as an undergrad at Syracuse University, his licensing deal with the NBA, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and stay tuned for episode 5 of the Up and Coming podcast. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Kwari Aline, and welcome to episode 5 of the Up and Coming podcast. Today we have a very special guest, and I know I say that every single episode. We have the well-renowned photorealist Adam Port, almost magician-like how you do your work, man. For those who don't know, Adam is a graduate of Syracuse University, graduated class of 2000, and it wouldn't be an Up and Coming podcast episode if we didn't start off with a gift that was personalized to you. So before we get into that, if y'all can see the paintings right there that he has, the black cement Jordan 4s, which I took the liberty of doing my own rendition. Yeah, so if you can see that, man, I don't know. I don't know how that compares, but
I like it. Did the no laces look?
You're right.
I like it.
So painting like that goes for typically how much would you say?
That painting, you're talking around $23,000.
What would I be able to sell this for here?
$20,000.
See, I like it.
I like it. No, I like it. That's sweet.
Awesome, man. Thank you, man. Sweet. So, and then the actual gift we have for you. I said you graduated from Syracuse, and the year before you enrolled was 95-96 season. You guys went to the national championship, played against Kentucky.
Yeah.
Do you remember who y'all's All-American was that year? Or who the best player on the team would have been? He went on to play for the Knicks.
The year before I got there.
Yeah, a year before you got there.
Was it Wallace?
Absolutely.
Right.
Ding, ding, ding. You have
that would have been bad if I didn't know that. No way.
Autograph signed John Wallace
here.
jersey from the 96 season. That's for you, man.
Oh, man.
We'll put this over there.
I'm taking a painting, too. Can I take the... That's very cool. Very generous of you. I appreciate that. I actually have something for you as well.
What?
You want to check it out now?
Man, yeah, absolutely. This is history, man. It's the first time I got a gift on the show. Yep.
Well, I just released this print recently.
Wow. Oh, is it what I think it is?
Yeah, it's of that painting.
Oh,
so I felt like, how could I not bring one with me? So.
Oh, my God.
What's the best way to show it? There you go.
That's amazing, man. Wow.
So
wow, definitely framing that, man.
Print number 20 of 223.
Wow.
That's yours.
Wow. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We actually got one more for you. This is from today's sponsor. Our sponsor, 1909, who specializes in licensed basketball apparel from some of the most legendary college teams we've ever seen, from Magic and Birds, Michigan State and Indiana State rivalry, to the 1990 UNLV Running Rebels, and everything in between. 199 has got you covered with shorts and tees sourced directly from that era. Head over to 199.com to get 10% off your first order. So these are actually shorts from that same season.
Get out of here.
Then you got your certificate of authenticity for the John Wallace jersey.
Oh my goodness.
So
wow,
for
man.
you, my man, I know it's kind of
that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
You got some you can frame, some you can wear, man.
I know a framer.
Yeah. So just to get into it, mentioning Q's, I grew up a huge Q's fan, from Carmelo and Johnny Flynn and Jerry McNamara, those guys came after you. But what was it like, going to Carrier Dome as an undergrad where you were there and experiencing that firsthand? It's
pretty intense. I mean, there's, you see it on TV and you could see how many people are there, but until you're really there and you hear the roar of the crowd, it's pretty spectacular. Yeah, it was a lot of fun going to those games.
Yeah. And so what made Cuse the destination for you for 4 years? Because I've never heard too much about the visual arts program, but obviously, it's produced a great artist in you.
Thanks. Yeah, growing up, I always loved Syracuse and the colors, and I had all the gear. And When I got older and started getting into art and realizing what I'm going to do, for college, I had opportunities to play sports, but I also had opportunities with art. And I started, doing my research, and I saw what kind of program they had, and I went to visit that school and a few others. And I met some of the professors, and I just really clicked with them, and I really liked their illustration program. And so that was, for me, it was like a no-brainer. Like, I always had dreams of playing sports in college, but throughout high school, I really started to hone my craft as far as art is concerned, and I just really thought that I had more of a future with that. And that's kind of how it started.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned sports. I was doing some research on you, actually. I saw you graduate class of 96. You were named Athlete of the Year.
I was.
So, and what sport did you play?
I played soccer,
nice,
and basketball and baseball.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Which were you better at? Which of the three?
That's an interesting question. I was probably best at baseball, but I liked it the least. Right. And then came soccer. And our team actually went to the state finals in my senior year.
Hewlett High School, right?
Which was kind of a fluke because we weren't a great team, but I think every team in our division actually made the playoffs that year, and we just went on a run, and we made all the way to the semis. And I was actually hurt throughout the playoffs, so we really didn't reach our full potential. We had a nice run, and and I had some opportunities to play soccer in college, but I visited some schools, and I really wanted to focus on art because I really felt like I didn't really have a chance to play professional soccer. And so I thought art would maybe be a slightly a better bet. I stuck with it ever since.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too much into the career, take me back to what it was like growing up in Long Island as a kid. Because, I went to school out in Long Island. I know it's a super...
Where'd you go?
Stony Brook.
Okay.
So, I know it's super secluded, super like suburbia in a lot of areas. How did all of this culture kind of seep into your psyche being out there? And, you got Gretzky of the 90s with the Rangers, Mike and the Knicks, hip hop was starting to take off. How did that kind of
I think the obvious answer is really just television. I mean, seeing Jordan on TV, and then, you start seeing the fashion creep into, everybody, what the Jordan, the sneakers, and then, the clothing, and that it just... that's where it started for me. So I grew up a huge Michael Jordan fan. So any chance I get, I was buying Jordans and trying to play like him on the basketball court. So as far as growing up there, it was like any other, I guess, upper middle class area. And we weren't really known for our sports, but we had some good teams, and we were competitive most of the time. And then as far as art kind of crept in, it was really just taking art classes and really just like exploring and starting to find artists and, what inspired me. And that kind of started from really like 13, 14 years old.
When did you start to notice you had a gift? Because that is insane. Now, I know I'm gonna keep repeating throughout the interview, but when did you realize I have?
I think it was around that time. Like every kid, I was always drawing and coloring because that's what you do when you're young, and And I think when I started taking classes in junior high school, one of my teachers had an airbrush, and he had all these paintings up around, and I was just fascinated with it. And around the same time, when I would go to the mall with my family, they had a kiosk in the middle of the mall, and there was an airbrush artist there. He was painting on like shirts and jackets, and I would always stay and watch. And my family would go off shopping, and I would just hang out there and watch this guy. I was just fascinated how quickly and accurately he was painting. And around the same time, I went with my family to a home show at Nassau Coliseum. And we were walking around, and there was this group of people in the corner, and they were huddled around this booth. And I went over there, and there was another guy airbrushing. And I couldn't believe how realistic the guy was getting. I think he was painting a tiger or a lion. And I was just like, I gotta get an airbrush. So that was kind of like how it started. I had my stints with trying to paint like Bob Ross. Remember that on TV with the hair?
For sure.
And that didn't work. And then I got an airbrush, and I taught myself how to paint, and it just felt comfortable in my hands, and I stuck with that.
Wow. Just kind of touching on some of the art, we see it right here and right here again.
I love it, man. It looks great.
Appreciate it, man. Those silhouettes specifically, you had so much freedom to do any other. You could have did the Concords or the black toe ones. Which made you did the show toes, the Shack Attacks. the 1s and the 4s? What made those silhouettes stick out to you?
Well, it was a combination of things. I mean, I have a long list of sneakers that I want to paint. But as I was doing my research and, certain sneakers brought back memories that I recalled through my childhood. And then also trying to find the sneakers to photograph. I mean, I was able to buy some online, and then I found some sneaker shops like those I bought on the sneakers app, and I just always wanted to paint those. I love the hang tag, and just the colors really spoke to me. And I believe I had them growing up. I had a bunch of Jordans. My memories is a little faded, but I always wanted to paint that. And then the Jordan 1s I found in a sneaker shop in Jersey. I reached out to a guy on Instagram, and there were a pair of 85s. Wow. Yeah. So I went out there with all my photography equipment, and I just started photographing sneakers, and I got a great shot, and that's how that one came about. And then with the Shacks, I wanted to do some Reebok pumps because of just how iconic they are, and I knew that Shaq wasn't the first pump, but like I always had a vision of doing a really large scale painting, and how could you not
Shaq
do
size
Shaq?
23, right?
Yeah, so I found those on eBay actually.
Wow.
And they're in really good condition. They're retro, but they look pretty much like the originals, and that's how that one came about. And then with the Adidas Superstars, I actually, we all grew up on Run DMC, and I had this idea to do a pair of the sneakers without the laces. And I had the title for the painting before I really even knew what I was going to paint, which was, it's titled Laces Out, which is a reference to Ace Ventura. I don't know if anybody gets that.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies, my favorite comedies. And I found a guy in Manhattan who had that pair, which was handmade in France. And he was really nice. He actually came to my studio in Manhattan that I set up prior to the show that I had. And he let me photograph them. And that's how those first 4 came about. And then, like I said, I have a list of all other ones that I've photographed.
So all the paintings come from photos that you take yourself?
Yes, I try to take it myself. So far, I've been really lucky to find these sneakers. Yeah, because, I've spent the last 20 plus years on paintings like the Patrick Ewing and other sports icons, and all those images I either have to license or find through other ways. And this was really the first opportunity that I had to photograph the subject matter the way that I wanted to and the lighting that I wanted to. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
What was it about surrealism that made it the thing that stuck to you? Like you mentioned, you dabbled in other types of art, but this one stuck with you to be like, hey, this is going to be the one I'm going to embark on a career on.
It was never something conscious. It was something that from an early age I was just able to copy things, comic books, and I would tear out pictures of MJ from like Sports Illustrated.
Did the same on tracing paper.
Yeah, and it's just, that's the way my brain functions, or maybe it's just the way I taught myself how to work. So it wasn't really something that I chose. It was just something that was innate. And and as I developed it, again, it was just a technique that I developed. I worked at it, and it was really the way that my brain interprets information, and that's just what I stuck with.
Gotcha. Now, doing my research about you, so you have quite the story. So after you graduate from Syracuse, you went on to coach soccer for a little bit, you mentioned. So the opportunity to go photograph or get a licensing deal with the NBA comes about. How does that happen? And the stars have to align in the perfect way for it to just even come about.
That's an interesting story. Yeah. So I believe I was in college at the time, and my good friend had floor seats right behind the visitors bench at the Garden. And so they obviously knew I was doing all these paintings of MJ, and they're like, listen, there's a Bulls game coming up. Why don't we take your painting there? We're going to be right behind the bench. Maybe we can get MJ's attention. Maybe he'll even sign it before or after the game. So I was like, of course, no doubt. So I gave it to him, and of course that didn't happen. They actually did take Jordan and Pippen's Gatorade cup. They stole it. They reached under the chair, and I still have those. But one of the NBA photographers was, under the basket where they usually are, and they saw the painting. So I think it was during a timeout. They came over to my friend. I was like, "Wow, that's a cool painting. What is it?" And they started talking, and he gave them his card. So after the game, they gave me the card, and I followed up. And I got in contact with the head of the photos department at the NBA. His name was Carmen Romanelli back then. Shout out to Carmen. I don't think he's there anymore. I know he's not there anymore. But he was really generous. He brought me into the photo archives, which was in Jersey. I'm not sure if it's there anymore. Everything's digitized now. But back then it was like 35 millimeter slides in like a huge room and file cabinets. He's like, listen, I like your work. I see potential. Go grab some photos. I'll give you the rights to do some paintings, and we'll see where it takes us. So I spent hours and hours in there, multiple times, just pulling images of every one of my favorite athletes. I even got my MJ. So I would sit there with the loop, looking at these little 35 millimeter slides, just pulling them, photo after photo, and then I got them developed, and I just started doing paintings. This painting actually, Ewing was the first painting that I did with my current technique, which is airbrush and then colored pencil on top of that, in Syracuse. I think it was 1998. So that was the first one that I did, and then I brought it to the NBA, and they liked it, and it's like, hey, we have this NBA store in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue. Why don't you showcase some of your paintings there? So I took that painting. I had one of Kobe. I had one of Iverson, and at the time, Sprewell was big, and he was on the Knicks. So I had those paintings in there, and that led to a license agreement, and that was kind of like the beginning of really like the start of my journey. And I was still in college doing that, which was, like you said, the stars aligned. I got real lucky, and I kind of took advantage of that, and yeah.
So what was that feeling for you to get the success? You're still in school. Did it come, super fast? Did you know how to manage or deal with it at the time?
It was interesting because I don't want to say anything negative about Syracuse because I love the program there. I learned a lot. I felt like I really developed as an artist there. But they probably do now, but back then they didn't really prepare us on the business aspect.
Gotcha.
Right? It was all about painting and technique and really honing your craft. I think we have one class they talked about, building a portfolio, getting a website going, which at that point, Google may have just started. It really wasn't, people were just starting to get websites. And they didn't really talk about licensing and anything that was business related. So it was more than anything, it was a learning experience. It was a great opportunity, and I got to showcase my artwork. I got my paintings in front of a lot of athletes, and it really helped develop. But like I said, it was more than anything, it was a learning experience because I really I had no idea. I had to bring my contracts to lawyer. Like I didn't know where to start. So yeah, it was a good learning experience.
So, and that kind of brings me to my next point. When you mentioned the art world not being the most stable profession at all, for anybody getting into it, any kind of form of art, really. For young kids that may just be coming out of school, who may be struggling, what is your advice to them where they're like maybe juggling part-time jobs and trying to pursue art full-time, but they just can't manage to do it?
Yeah, like you said, it's tough, but like anything, you have to really just be hyper focused on your goals, and when it comes to art, you really gotta practice and get good at it. You have to be really confident in it, and I think most importantly, as an artist, whether you're doing graphic design or fine art, you have to create a really strong portfolio because first impressions are everything. So whether you're sending it out to get a gig to do a magazine cover, or like I said, get a job as a graphic designer, you really have to put your best foot forward and have a strong portfolio that really represents the art that you're trying to create and put out there in the world.
Now, looking at your work now, to the naked eye looks incredible, to anybody looking at it, but I know you have a totally different perspective of it. Sure. Because you labeled yourself as a perfectionist. When did you start to see your work improve from, say, maybe 5-10 years ago to now? What's been the biggest change for you?
That's tough because it's interesting. Like I look at my Patrick Ewing painting and it's probably still one of my favorites. And when other people tell me what their favorite is, It's usually that one.
Right.
And that was really the beginning of my journey as far as my technique. So it's really hard to say, but I feel like over the years I've definitely gotten more proficient at it, more quicker. I'm really able to render things better and quicker. But again, if you compare the Ewing to the the fours over there. I mean, there's not a significant change in technique. And unless you're looking up really close, you're not going to see the subtle differences that maybe I would see or, someone else would. But it's definitely developed over the years, and I've definitely gotten quicker and I think better. Yeah.
Now, you've done artwork for some of the biggest names that we know, from Jay-Z to Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame induction, Elvis estate. What has been the most rewarding, and do you have a story on any of the ones that you've done?
I've got stories for days. I don't have a favorite painting per se. I always hear a lot of artists say my favorite painting is the next one. And being a perfectionist, it comes to a point where when I'm painting, it's never really finished, but you get to a stage where you either can't look at it anymore, or you meet the deadline, or it's just, I can work on it for more days, but I don't know if it'll improve any. So I'm trying to think what my favorite project was. Well, doing the painting for MJ when he was inducted to the Hall of Fame was pretty special. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And you got a chance to meet him and showcase it to him?
I met him for a few seconds. You know what? So I'll tell you a story. It started off where I reached out to the Hall of Fame once I heard that Jordan was being inducted, because we're all waiting. We knew it was happening. They said, okay, sure, we'll take a meeting. So I actually borrowed a friend's truck. I loaded it with paintings. I drove up to Springfield, and as we were rolling in, the transmission went out.
Oh,
so
it always happens like that.
I literally rolled into the parking lot.
Wow.
So we get there, I load the paintings, we have the meeting, it all went great. We took a tour of the entire Hall of Fame. It was fantastic. And then after the meeting, I get out to the car and it wouldn't start. We had to get towed home. That's a whole other story. But anyway, needless to say, we spoke a lot of times and went back and forth. Eventually, they essentially agreed to let me do it. And so I spent about maybe almost 3 months working on that painting to get it where I was really happy with it. And we showcased it, and we unveiled it at a dinner. It was, I think, the night after the induction, the Hall of Fame. And we unveiled it, and then I went over to MJ, and I spoke to him for a minute or so. And then I was able to give a print to each of the inductees. There's 5 of them, which was really cool. So they all have one of my prints.
9 was a loaded class, I think.
Yeah.
It was a pretty loaded class, yeah.
Dave Robinson, and John Stockton, Sloan.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Stringer, the women's coach from St. John's. Yeah, that was a loaded class. So that was really cool. It's interesting. Every painting has a story. Even up to this last one with the steel painting. I mean, I had a show lined up, and then COVID happened.
Right.
And that got postponed. So
How has it been creating through that? Do you find yourself painting more now, painting less, or struggling? Well, I mean, finding motivation is just kind of like looking at a photo for you, but
yeah, it was really hard. I mean, I put a good 2 years developing this concept, and then probably a good 5 or 6 months working on the paintings leading up to the show. So when that happened, we had to cancel it about a week before the show was supposed to open. And I don't know if you guys obviously remember, back then there was a little bit of panic, but it wasn't like, oh my God, everything, like the sky's falling. So it was like really slow progression where I'd start getting texts like, hey, I think your show's gonna get canceled. And then we'd still power through, and then someone else would reach out and be like, yeah, there's no way. And then people started canceling their flights. I had television spots that were canceled and interviews for magazines that were put on hold. So it was it started to build up. And then I remember my wife called me and she's like, you got to get out of the city. The numbers started rising rapidly. So I brought the paintings to the gallery. We hung them up anyway, even though we knew the show wasn't happening, but we didn't know. It could have been just a month. I had no idea it was going to be 8 months into this, and we're still in the middle of it. So it was pretty hard. And then I lost motivation for maybe a couple months. Yeah, and then I started to get back into it, and started working on more paintings. And I'm just working on more sneaker paintings, hoping that things open up and we can get back to it and have a show.
Now, you mentioned off camera that this Jordan 4 painting took you about 100 hours to complete. Now, 10,000 hours is something I've heard throughout my life all the time when you finally kind of reach mastery. How many hours would you say you've put into your painting since the time you kind of started your professional career up to now?
I mean, it's definitely at least 10,000 hours for sure. I mean, I've got inventory of all my paintings, how many hours, but I've never really tallied it. But yeah, it's got to be at least 10,000 hours, probably closer to 20. Yeah.
And do you feel you've mastered your craft yet, or you feel like you're still?
Yeah, I'm always learning. I mean, I would imagine most artists would admit that they're always learning something, discovering a new way to do something better, quicker, faster. So I definitely have a good grasp on my technique. I'd actually like to start doing more oil painting. Okay. Yeah, but that's, I haven't done that in a while, so it's like picking up a new craft that's starting again. Different technique. Painting with a paintbrush is significantly different than an airbrush. Just for the obvious, you're not even with an airbrush. You're not really even touching the surface, so it's a different feel. But yeah, as far as my technique goes, I'm definitely there with the comfortability and speed. But as far as just like even with colors, you're always learning how to mix new colors or find different ways to achieve a similar look, make it better, more refined.
Now, we spoke a little bit about the young creatives a little while ago, but support is huge in anything you do, as you obviously know. How supportive were your folks coming up of your art career? And did they kind of write it off as like, oh, he's just dabbling in a like a passion of his, or did they see the same talent that you?
No, they couldn't have been more supportive, and are still supportive this day. I mean, I think they saw early on that I had something, and yeah, they've been great. They really, I can't thank them enough for really just allowing me to follow my dreams. Simply put, I mean, yeah, they, once I told them that I wanted to go to school for art, they're like, go for it. And haven't looked back since, and they're still right there with me. Gotcha.
Now, looking at these paintings here, can you just take me through a little bit of the process, how it starts, for people who may not know? I know you upload them on YouTube and stuff, but what is from start to finish, how is the process for you?
So from start to finish, it begins with a concept, just an idea. And then with the earlier stuff, with the photos, it's about finding the photos. And then one of the greatest tools that I ever discovered back at Syracuse, I took a class, thank goodness, was Photoshop. It really helped me put my vision to, the computer screen and then be able to transfer that onto, canvas or board, which is what I use. So once you have the concept there, it really starts with transferring that image to the painting surface. With the Patrick Ewing, most photorealists use one of two techniques, which is a grid, which is you put a grid on top of an image, and then you put a larger grid on top of the painting surface, and then you transfer square by square the information in each square, or you use a projector. With the Ewing, I actually used both. I projected the image with the grid because there's so much information just in his face with the sweat and the hair and even with the background and the crowd. And that proved to be really great for that painting, but too time consuming because I got lost in detail. I think the drawing itself took me close to 20 hours. So once I do the drawing, which now is just a projector, which really is just a time saver and for accuracy purposes. I mean, I could sit here and just look at the image and draw it, and eventually I'll get there, but you have to be quick, right? You can't spend forever just working on it. You really have to meet deadlines or just not take too long. So once the drawing is on the surface, then I start to apply the paint with an airbrush, and I thin the paint with water so you get really transparent colors. So it's just building up the layers from light to dark. Sometimes I use stencils to get like a really hard line, and then other times I'll just use the airbrush to put in all the detail. Once that's about maybe 90-95% complete, I'll come back in with the colored pencils, which refines it, makes it a little bit sharper, brings out some of the highlights. Then I'll go back and forth with each technique until I feel like it's done or I can't just look at it anymore. But that's basically the technique in a nutshell. And like you mentioned earlier, I mean, my paintings average around 100 hours. Up to, the painting I did for the Hall of Fame, that was about 300 hours. So that's a lot of time. Yeah.
One question that I had for you is you came up in a very analog era, right? Before kind of like the influx of, social media or phones or anything. So the focus that you could kind of give to whatever your passion was it was through the roof. You could literally spend 8 hours just doing one thing. Do you think coming up in that era kind of aided you in being able to say, hey, I'm just going to focus on this rather than having the multiple distractions that are around you?
I think so. I think that, like I said earlier, I was really lucky to do a Photoshop class. But prior to that, I always shied away from the computers. I didn't like using that as a tool because I felt like it was taking away from, yeah, in a sense. So I really stayed away from that. And I think it did help me develop my technique, my skill, my patience level. But I do think that I was lucky in that I was in college in the beginning of the transition from painting to using a computer, not only as a tool but as a means to an end to create the art. So it was definitely helpful. And I always wonder, like, if I was younger and I started and it was all computers and technology, if I would have done a little different. I always say, like, if I couldn't paint, I'd be a photographer. But I wonder if I couldn't paint, would I be, painting on a computer?
Gotcha. That was actually one of my questions. I was going to ask you, had painting not kind of, came to fruition with you, what would have been the other way you would have went?
I don't know. I really think I would have stuck with painting because it's just something that really is, felt natural to me. Not to say I don't use a computer. Like I said earlier, I use Photoshop and I use it a lot, and even post, like when I get my paintings photographed or scanned, like I got to go back in and clean it up with, clean all the dust and all the irregularities. So I couldn't do what I do without the computers. But yeah, I still think that I would still be painting the same way. Yeah.
Now, one thing that astounded me when I visited your site is the price mark of your paintings, which first off, I want to say congratulations. It's number one. But selling your work at that price doesn't come overnight at all, right? Yeah. It kind of just a build up to where you get. Some of them are approaching, over the five figure mark, close to, $40,000 for some of them. What did you have to learn about the business side you mentioned before? And when did you start feeling comfortable saying, hey, I'm going to sell myself because this my stuff at this price because this is what it's worth to me, and this is the work that went into it that, young creatives kind of struggle with. Like, if I'm creating this, do I feel comfortable selling at this price? Because are people going to buy it? Or are people going to look at me and say, oh, who the hell does he think he is trying to sell this at this price to me?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance of trying to find the right price point. I mean, I've learned my lessons over the years, over the course of 20 years now. I mean, when I was first starting out, I had my thought process was, I worked on it for X amount of hours and I think I deserve this. But that's not always the case. I mean, you go out there, you show it to somebody and they say either yes, no, or hell no, or they say, no, but I'll give you this. So I've definitely lost deals, in the beginning, trying to price it what I thought I was worth. But then in hindsight, maybe I should have charged less. And then, it's just finding the right balance. And then, once you start getting people to buy it in a certain price point, and then you feel more comfortable putting it there. And then, you gradually build up and, up into where they're at now.
So, and another thing that kind of blew my mind is that you don't have the largest following, right? That your work would, I say, permit, right?
Yeah.
Like looking at the Instagram, I've seen artists who were, far less talented with, hundreds of thousands of followers.
Sure.
How do you market yourself in this, digital age? You're trying to, push things on Twitter and Instagram right now.
Yeah, as they say, art is subjective, so it's not always the best that gets out there. And, some people are better at social media than others. I was a little late in the game as far as social media, which is a bit ironic because I was right out of college. I went to get a website. So I was like, I was on top of things, but I was late in the game as far as that. So you see all these people building a huge social following regardless of their skill level. So about 5 years ago is when I started getting on social media, and I'm still trying to build up. But it's really important to use that as a tool. I mean, anytime you can reach somebody across the world in a second just by posting something, that's really important.
Now, I know you've got little ones of your own. How old are they, and have they kind of dabbled into what dad does, or do you see any gifts in them at all?
Absolutely. So I got a 4-year-old little boy named Jackson, and my daughter's 7. Her name's Charlotte. And my daughter is really creative. And I always joke, I made the mistake of putting a table in my studio with all of her art supplies. So she's taken over my studio, but she's in there every day coloring and painting. And yeah, she loves it. And she definitely takes after her daddy.
How gratifying is that to see them kind of follow in your footsteps?
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. And hopefully they're both athletic, and I can get them to be a professional athlete, one of them at least, so I can fulfill my dream through them.
Gotcha.
I think my son's pretty athletic.
Okay.
So, nice. He's still young, 4, but I'm fingers crossed.
Now I know we're both lefties, which is probably the only thing. Yeah, probably the only thing we have in common in terms of art. Okay. You know what I mean?
I know, you got promise, man.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that. But like just in drawing, because I've smudged all over this painting, just because lefties are cursed with that. Yeah. We just have it on the paper. How did you manage to get around that part? Because that to me is still
start from the right and work your way to the left. That's it. That's really that simple.
Right.
But yeah, I've always grown up when in school, like I would always have pen marks on my hand.
Down the side. The binder gets in the way.
You just accept it and do your best. Right. When I'm drawing, I always have a piece of paper under my hand between the board and my hand, so I'm not smudging.
Right.
But sometimes there's no way around it.
It just. You mentioned some of your inspirations, your biggest inspirations were Chuck Close, Norman Rockwell, Drew Struzan. Yeah. What about each of those guys do you pull from, and how did they kind of come into you to like say, these guys are the ones that I look up to? I mean, obviously they work Star Wars and all the bunch of Back to the Futures and all of that.
It's interesting. When I was in college, again, I was doing a lot of airbrushing, and I wasn't happy with it completely. It felt like something was missing. And then I discovered Drew Struzan, who did all those famous movie posters. And that's when I started using colored pencil. And it was like a light bulb almost, like, oh my God, this is exactly what was missing. And I've studied his work, forever. And then when, Norman Rockwell, I mean, he's an incredible painter, incredible storyteller. So I always try to take some aspect of what Rockwell, which is my son's middle name, Jackson Rockwell.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, there's a famous painting called The Art Connoisseur, which is a Norman Rockwell painting. And in the painting, there's a gentleman in an art gallery or a museum looking at a Jackson Pollock painting.
Wow.
And that always stayed in my mind. So when
that's awesome.
Find a name, Jackson Rockwell.
Right.
So Drew Struzan and Norman Rockwell, I mean, those guys are incredible artists. But beyond that, their technique and their ability to render is top notch. So that's always what stuck with me. And I always felt like, even though the art world is tough, and I think quality will always outlast anything else. So I always made sure to have something that really held up, as far as technical standpoint. Yeah. Now
I know you mentioned Kobe a little, earlier in the podcast. Kobe's my all-time favorite player. I know you were fortunate enough to do a painting of him.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to his passing? And then with the painting, are there any plans to release something in his honor or memory down the line?
Yeah. So that was really tough for me. Kobe and I were the same age. I grew up obviously in the Michael Jordan era, but Kobe was the closest thing to Jordan. So I remember being in high school. I remember exactly where I was, and my buddy, I think I was either sophomore, junior in high school, and my buddy's like, "Hey, look out for this kid Kobe from Lower Merion." I was like, "Okay." Yeah. So that was my introduction to Kobe, and from them, I when he passed away, I put out this post on Instagram of all these memories that I had, where I was when he shot this or the game winner here, and so when he passed, that was the first time I cried in years. I can't even remember the last time I cried prior to that. So that hit me hard. Shortly after that, I found a pair of Crazy 8s.
Wow.
His first signature shoe.
Yeah.
And I bought them on eBay. And I'm going to do a painting of that. And hopefully when I have a show, I can showcase that.
That'll be amazing.
Yeah, but that was tough, man. But yeah, it's MJ, Kobe, and everybody else.
Yeah, see, I'm the same.
I love LeBron. He's fantastic. But those two guys are just in a class of their own.
Thank you so much for everybody out there. Thank you. So you mentioned buying kicks on eBay, and I'm huge fan of buying grails secondhand that we can find, right?
Yeah,
I know it's
yeah.
super fun to track down.
Yep.
Would you consider yourself a sneakerhead, and what is the pair of grails that you don't have that you're still trying to see?
There's so many, but yes, I am. I'm kind of like a closet sneakerhead.
Okay.
Because I go through phases, like I'll buy up sneakers, and then like I'll come back and be like, I can't wear them. They're too nice. I'm gonna just sell them all on eBay.
Right.
And then like years later, I'll buy some more if a retro comes out. And then it wasn't until I started thinking about doing sneaker paintings where I started really like collecting them again. And I started buying them on the Sneakers app. And last year they had so many releases. I had the Bread 11s. I had the 4s. So I bought them all. I photographed them and I started returning them. And I don't know why. It wasn't even about the money. I was just like, I don't need them. I photographed them already. So I really regret that. But as far as the ones that I would like the most, it's got to be a pair of 85 Chicagos. I mean, they're the nicest.
Man, insane.
Peter Moore, the designer, like, what can you say? It's classic. The colorways are endless.
Yeah, there's no better silhouette.
The only negative thing I'll say about it is I have a wide foot, and they're pretty narrow. So I'll buy them up, put them on, and be like, damn, they don't feel good. So I got to stretch them all out and then wear them. But yeah, 85 Chicagos, but they're pricey.
So, okay, pricey, but considering that you could sell one of these for the same price, what's stopping you from going all out and saying,
I will go all out, but you know what stops me? My kids.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because,
responsibilities,
responsibilities. If I was painting sneakers 10, 15 years ago and I was single or not married, I'd have a bedroom full of them, for sure.
I gotta learn how to paint, man. I learn how to paint before I have kids. That's the thing. That's what I gotta do, man.
That's right.
So you mentioned Kobe and Mike, and I gotta get your top 5 of all time. Oof. I know it's hard to put you on the spot because it's ever changing, but Kobe, Mike, 1 and 2. Yeah. The rest of the 3 spots, where do we go?
That's really hard because, like, you look at guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem before our time. So all you hear is stories or stats or, the 100-point game. So how do you not put Wilt on that, right?
Absolutely.
I always wondered how he would do in the modern game.
Right.
But, so I would put Wilt with Kobe and Jordan. Oh, man. I don't know. Every time I put a top 5, I always put Pippen in there.
Okay. That's different. That's different, but I like it.
I think he was grossly underrated.
Yeah, absolutely.
For obvious reasons. But I think I would put Pippen in there. And then my 5th, oh my gosh. That's tough. Do I pick a big man or a little guy?
Right.
I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on the 5th one because that's like the last spot.
Right. There's so many different ways you can go, man. You can go old and put Kareem there. You go Bill. You put Bron there. You put
Magic.
Bird.
Maybe
Magic.
Bill Russell. I
mean,
defensively, how do you not, with all the championships that he's got, you might have to put Bill Russell.
That's a nice 5, yeah.
I'm missing a point guard.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Might have to go Magic.
I'll get back to you with that.
Got you, man. So you mentioned Bob Ross earlier too, with in one of his famous lines is mistakes are okay, mistakes are good, right?
Yeah, sure.
How do you manage making mistakes in your art, or do you have you minimized them now to this point, or is it like just something that just continues to happen? You work through it.
I've certainly minimized them, but they happen. The easiest way is to just paint over it and start again. Every once in a while you smudge a line or you don't like the way something looks, and you just go back and retrace your steps and either erase it, paint over it, and start it over.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, this took a day and a half, and this was frustrating enough, and this is,
No, you always, there's certain times you get to the point where, like, if you keep going, you're just going to mess it up.
Right.
So you do the best you can, and you just get to a point where it's good enough. But with my technique, I mean, it's so mechanical in a sense where there's just like step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that I've definitely been able to minimize any mistakes. So the only thing that really happens is when something gets damaged. Like a few years ago, I did a painting of Babe Ruth, and I don't know if UPS dropped it or they just put something on top of it, but I got it back, and like the right top corner was completely just bent, and I had to. Fortunately, the way the painting was, I was able to cut it out and replace the piece and redo it. But yeah, those are really the only times that I can recall that I had to go back and redo a piece.
Looking ahead now, we're currently in October now. Hopefully the world starts to open up pretty soon. What is next for Adam Port? What do you have in the works? What do you have in store? Are we looking to get some stuff in galleries next, or what's up next for you?
Yeah, so one of my goals after doing like the sports pop art related paintings for 20 years was to get into a gallery.
And you got in the George Billis Gallery over
I got in the George
summer.
Billis Gallery a year ago. A little over a year ago. Well, it was last March of 2019. So that was my goal. And then I had a painting in there which was titled Breakdance. I don't know if you saw it on the website.
The B-boy one. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So that was a painting that I based off a photograph that I took in 1998 in Times Square. And I wanted to paint it forever, and I just never got around to it. And so I was at the point in my career where I didn't want to paint the sports type artwork anymore because, one, my goal was to get an art gallery, and I really didn't think, or I knew that there really wasn't any art gallery that would accept my art as it was, because the perception was that it was more sports memorabilia and not fine art. So I got lucky in that I got that painting in there. And then I had the idea shortly after that to do the sneaker paintings. So I went to the gallery owner and I said, here's my concept. What do you think? And he liked it. And he agreed to do a show. So that's when I started working on those paintings. So my goal is to really see that through and get a show of my sneaker art. And who knows where that'll take me for the foreseeable future. I'd like to focus on that. But who knows? I may go back to the black and white landscape, cityscapes. I don't know, but there's no shortage of ideas in my head. But I really enjoy painting sneakers. It's a nice change from painting portraits, which I've been doing for so long. So painting the textures on the sneakers and the leather and the hang tags and the plastic and the soles. It's a new challenge that I'm really enjoying.
Now, do you feel there, because you just mentioned, people looking at it as memorabilia versus fine art. Do you feel there's a stigma attached to, this painting not being considered fine art? I mean, which I believe it. I definitely believe it.
100%. Unfortunately, there used to be stores or what you can call galleries that had sports memorabilia in it, and they often had a lot of paintings. There was a lot of artists that really were considered sports artists, and I guess starting off, I fell into that category, but I never really wanted to be a sports artist per se. I just wanted to be an artist. And it really wasn't until I, took a step back and said, what are my goals? What do I want to do? I wanted to get into art gallery. Well, there aren't any more galleries that exist that show sports art. I really need to change something because it's not going to happen. And I'm not going to force it to happen. But I really felt with the sneaker paintings, I mean, it's more than just sports art. It's fashion.
Yeah, and there's so much connected to it. I mean, the emotion in that for somebody who might have stood online for 10 hours to get their first pair.
In addition to the convergence of sports, art, music, fashion, it's, you're conveying an emotion based off of my experience with the sneakers, your experience, and hopefully, a lot of people. So that's really what I wanted to do with the sneaker paintings. And I hope we get a show because I really want to formally introduce my paintings in person to the world. Right now, it's just doing it online, which you really can't, I don't think.
There's a barrier there, yeah.
Yeah, there's a barrier there. You really can't see, I think, the quality of even the scale. I mean, I had a painting, the Shaq painting, I posted online without me in it, and someone said to me, I didn't realize how big it was until you were standing next to it. So you really lose something when you're seeing it online on the computer or on your phone. So hopefully I get a chance to showcase that.
Yeah, and I hope that's conveyed here, because even looking at it online, you only see it in a 4x4 box on Instagram. So when you pulled this out of the trunk, I'm like, in my head, I was like, this thing is this is incredible. Like, it's huge, man. Like, this takes up so much space on the wall.
I mean, I'd love to paint them even larger, but I don't really have the space for that. Like a room like this that we're in right now would be great for it. But plus you need a bigger car. You need, it gets really hard, cumbersome to do paintings much larger. But yeah, I mean, I think these are a nice size. and I'd like to go larger, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do that.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned, you were doing an interview and you were like, this isn't, I'm not trying to trick people here with making you think that, but there's no way that somebody walking by be like, hey, that's a nice photo right there. You know what I mean? Get caught up. How many times do people, who don't know that it's your work or that it's a painting and they come across this and think it's a photo?
It happens all the time, and that's okay. When people are seeing my paintings in person, I always encourage them to get as close as they can so they can actually see and almost, feel the textures. And sometimes there's pencil strokes in there, and, but it happens all the time. In fact, today I posted something on Instagram, and the first comment was, why not just take a photo? Well, I mean, I'm not the first guy to paint something photorealistically, but, it's the way my brain works. It's the way that I render something, and it's really about conveying an idea or a concept, and whether it's abstract or realism. I mean, there's certainly validity to it, and if it's not your thing, that's okay. But there are people who I think, plenty of people who appreciate
absolutely,
what I'm able to accomplish.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Now, before I let you get out of here, what is one thing that you haven't got around to painting yet, or one thing that's been in your head that you haven't been able to get out that you're like dying to do, or one thing you're dying to paint?
One thing I'm dying to paint. Well, like I said earlier, I have a long list of sneakers that I'm dying to paint. But I'd like to continue painting images that I'm able to photograph. Like I said, for a long time, I was painting photographs from all these guys who were at the games, snapping shots of Kobe and Jordan and Ewing, and it was great, but it wasn't my image. I felt like there was, a little bit of a disconnect, because as great as the image is, it's not my image. So I'd like to continue to do that and just find new, exciting ways to present the sneakers and, tell a story really about my journey as a sneakerhead. Yeah. And hopefully other people will connect with that as well.
Right. Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we get out of here, can you let the people know where they can find you, where they can find your work? Because I definitely want people to be able to see what we see here today.
Yeah, sure. The best way is to go to my website, adamport.com, or Instagram, Art of Adamport. Those are the two ways that are probably the best to view my artwork, and I update those two pretty regularly. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming out. You came all the way.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait to put them up and hang them. Maybe I might wear these shorts.
Perfect. Awesome.
And then I'll hang them.
Perfect, man.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. So that is it for episode 5 of the Up and Coming Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe. And after this episode goes live, you can find us on all of your streaming services, whether that be Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud. We'll have all the audio backed up from all of our previous episodes. So stay tuned for more, and episode 6 coming soon.